Myth 1. People of the Middle Ages were rough and ignorant thanks to a great extent to Hollywood films. Numerous individuals accept that the Middle Ages were brimming with strict notion and numbness. However, truth be told, driving antiquarians deny that there is any proof of this. Science and reasoning bloomed at that point mostly because of the presentation of universities all over Europe. The Middle Ages delivered the absolute most prominent workmanship, music, and writing in all history. Boethius, Boccaccio, Dante, Petrarch, and Machiavelli are as yet worshipped today for their splendid personalities. The basilicas and palaces of Europe are as yet standing and contain probably the most lovely fine art and stonework man has had the option to make with his exposed hands. Medication at the time was crude, however it was organized and ready to grasp new thoughts when they emerged. Myth 2. People in the Middle Ages accepted the earth was flat. Furthermore, individuals didn't accept the earth was the focal point of the universe. The celebrated priest Copernicus managed a final knockout to that thought, without being rebuffed, a long time before Galileo was gone after for blasphemy for guaranteeing that it refuted the Bible was. 2. Present-day history specialists as of late distributed a book in which they state, there was hardly a Christian researcher of the Middle Ages who didn't recognize Earth's sphericity and even know its rough boundary. Myth 3. Women were mistreated in the Middle Ages. In the 1960s and 1970s, the possibility that ladies were abused in the Middle Ages thrived. Truth be told, we should simply think about a couple of critical ladies from the period to see that that isn't accurate in any way. Saint Joan of Arc was a young lady who was given full control of the French armed force. Her ruin was political and would have happened whether she were male or female. Hildegard von Bingen was a polymath in the Middle Ages who was held in such high regard that kings, popes, and lords all looked for her recommendation. Her music and composing exists right up till today. Elizabeth I controlled as a groundbreaking sovereign in her own right, and numerous different countries had ladies pioneers. Conceited ladies didn't deal with cathedrals, however they positively did their fair share in the fields and towns. Moreover, the guidelines of gallantry implied that ladies must be treated with the best of pride. The greatest distinction between the idea of women's liberation in the Middle Ages and now is that in the Middle Ages it was accepted that ladies were equivalent in pride, diverse in work. Presently the idea has been changed to equivalent in poise and capacity. Myth 4. The Middle Ages were a period of incredible violence. While there was brutality in the Middle Ages, similarly as there had consistently been, there were no equivalents to our advanced Stalin, Hitler, and Mao. A great many people experienced their lives without encountering viciousness. The Inquisition was not the vicious bloodlust that numerous films and books have guaranteed it to be, and most current students of history presently concede this promptly. Present-day times have seen decimation, mass homicide, and sequential killing, something for all intents and purposes inconceivable before the Illumination. Truth be told, there are extremely just two sequential enemies of note from the Middle Ages, Elizabeth Bathory, and Gilda Rice. For the individuals who question the way that the Inquisition brought about not many passings, Wikipedia has the insights here indicating that there were, probably, 826 recorded executions over a multi-year time span from 45,000 preliminaries. Myth 5. Peasants carried on with an existence of drudgery and extremely difficult work. In truth, while laborers in the Middle Ages accomplished buckle down, working the fields was the best way to guarantee you could eat. They had customary celebrations, strict and common, which included moving, drinking, games, and competitions. Huge numbers of the games from the time are as yet played today: chess, checkers, dice, days man's fane, and some more. It may not appear as fun as the most recent game for the WII, yet it was an extraordinary chance to appreciate the particularly warm climate that was brought about by the medieval warming period. Myth 6. People didn't wash in the Middle Ages. Along these lines they smelled bad. Not just is this a complete fantasy, it is so generally accepted that it has offered ascent to an entire different arrangement of fantasies. For example, the deception that church incense was intended to shroud the smell of such a large number of individuals in a single spot. Truth be told, the incense was a piece of the church's customs because of its history originating from the Jewish religion, which likewise utilized incense in its penances. This fantasy has likewise led to the unusual thought that individuals generally wedded in May or June since they didn't smell so gravely having had their yearly shower. It is, obviously, articulate junk. Individuals wedded in those months since marriage was not permitted during Lent, the period of retribution. Along these lines, back to malodorous individuals. In the Middle Ages, most towns had bathhouses actually. Neatness and cleanliness was profoundly respected to such an extent that washing was fused into different services, for example, those encompassing knighthood. A few people washed every day, others less normally, yet a great many people washed. Moreover, they utilized boiling water. They simply needed to warm it up themselves, not at all like us with our cutting-edge plumbed high-temp water. The French put it best in the accompanying Latin explanation: venere, ludere, lavare, bibera, hoc est vivere. Myth 7. Peasants had covered rooftops with creatures living in them. First of all, the covered tops of medieval homes were woven into a tight tangle. They were not simply packages of straw and sticks tossed on the house. Creatures would not effectively have had the option to get inside the rooftop, and thinking about how concerned the normal middle-ager was, if a creature got inside, they would be expeditiously expelled, similarly as we evacuate flying creatures or other little animals that enter our homes today. What's more, for the record, covered rooftops were not only for poor people. Numerous palaces and more fantastic homes had them also, on the grounds that they worked so well. There are numerous homes in English towns today that despite everything have covered rooftops. Myth 8. The poor were kept in a condition of close starvation. This is totally bogus. Laborers, the individuals who worked in manual work, would have had new porridge and bread every day with lager to drink. Moreover, every day would have a collection of dried or restored meats, cheeses, and foods grown from the ground from their zone. Poultry, chicken, ducks, pigeons, and geese were normal on the laborers' supper table. A few workers additionally preferred to keep honey bees, to give nectar to their tables. Given the decision among McDonald's and medieval worker food, I presume the laborer food would be progressively nutritious and delectable. The rich of the time had an extraordinary selection of meats, for example, steers, and sheep. They would eat a larger number of courses for every dinner than poor people, and would most likely have had various spiced dishes, something the poor couldn't bear. Wikipedia has an intriguing article here which depicts the generally vegetable and grain diet of the workers in the early Middle Ages, prompting more meat in the later period. Myth 9. Bibles were bolted away to shield the individuals from seeing the genuine word. During the Middle Ages, until Gutenberg went along, all books must be composed by hand. This was a careful errand which took numerous months, especially with a book as extensive as the Bible. The activity of hand-printing books was left to priests concealed in religious communities. These books were extraordinarily significant, and they were required in each church as the Bible was perused out loud at Mass each day. So as to secure these significant books, they would be bolted away. There was no connivance to keep the Bible from the individuals. The locks implied that the church could ensure that the individuals could hear the Bible. Many wouldn't have had the option to peruse, each day. Furthermore, just to show that it wasn't only the Catholic Church that bolted up the Bibles for well-being, the most acclaimed tied book of scriptures is the incomparable Bible, which Henry VIII had made and requested to be perused in the Protestant houses of worship. You can peruse progressively about that here. The Catholicity of Lincoln says something on the training here. Myth 10. Capital punishment was normal in the Middle Ages. Despite what numerous individuals accept, the Middle Ages brought forth the jury framework, and preliminaries were in reality exceptionally reasonable. Capital punishment was viewed as incredibly serious and was utilized distinctly in the most pessimistic scenarios of wrongdoings like homicide, treachery, and incendiarism. It was not until the Middle Ages started to attract to a nearby that individuals like Elizabeth I started to utilize capital punishment as a way to free their countries of strict rivals. Open executions were not as we find in the motion pictures. They were offered distinctly to the rich, and were typically not acted out in the open. The most widely recognized technique for execution was hanging, and consuming was amazingly uncommon. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.